All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this episode of Pathways to Energy Efficiency. As always, you can catch us every Tuesday at 12:15 as we discuss about different topics surrounding homes and businesses and how they can become more energy efficient. Today we are really excited to have joining us today two people from Black Mountain Architecture, Adam Zalotowski and Jesse Schwartzberg. Today they're going to be talking a little bit about net zero homes. So what are they and how can you achieve one? And so with that, I'm going to gladly turn over the presentation to Jesse Schwartzberg, and he's going to tell us all about it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It's great to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. And I look forward to talking about net zero, how that affects houses. The examples we're going to use here are multifamily projects, but the same principles apply to single family residents as they do to the buildings we're going to be talking about here. So, and Adam's going to advance the slides, and we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end, and we'll talk for about 15 minutes here. So yeah, ready, Adam, when you are.
All right.
Great. So tell you a little bit about Black Mountain Architecture. I want to define net zero and what that means as a target in green building. And then we're going to use some precedents of projects that we've worked on. And there's two of them that we're going to go through. We're also going to talk to you a little about some resources that you can use if you want to do a net zero project and point you in the right direction. And then we'll have some summary and questions. So this is our team. This is Black Mountain Architecture. We're 5 people. We're in Saranac Lake, New York. And we have a passion for the Adirondacks. We have a passion for green buildings, sustainability. We work locally and regionally. And this type of work is what really gets us out of the bed in the morning. And we love doing it. And next. So I want to talk just some basic principles and net zero. So by definition, what net zero means is that it doesn't mean you're off the grid, you're tied to the grid as this slide conveys, but you produce as much energy on a given piece of property as that building or that property is going to use in a year time frame. So in November, no, the solar panels, the different things on the roof are not going to be producing enough energy. But in July and August, you make up for it as one example. And at the end of the year, you've produced as much as you've consumed. On this slide, you can also see some basic things that we're going to get into and use real examples. But on the left, you see solar PV. The second arrow in the middle is passive solar heating. We're using the sun as a heater, as a furnace, if you will. And on the top, we're using solar thermal, so heating hot water on the roof for showers, as you can see. So next slide. This diagram shows, because we are using the sun and we're in the northern hemisphere, the sun, as you all know, the sun is high in the summer, it's low in the winter. And we need to really pay attention on this type of building to be net zero. You really want to capture the sun and capture it in the ways that are helpful and not hurting you. So on the left, there's a solar pathfinder, a tool we use. You don't want to build buildings that are shading your solar panels or shading each other. We want to look at the angles and also have overhangs and shade in the right place on our buildings. Next. So I'll pause here for just a minute so you can soak in the scale of this. This Net Zero Village is the largest net zero complex in the country. It's outside Schenectady, Albany area in New York. The second project is bigger than this, and that will be the biggest of net zero community of this scale in the country. And from this photo, if you take you think about the diagrams that I had previously, You can see the solar voltaics. Those are mounted on carports, and so they're shading the cars, keeping them warm, or sorry, keeping keeping the solar panels warm. They're keeping the cars cool, and also keeping the snow off in the winter. If you look on the top of the roof, you see the solar thermal panels, which is producing the hot water for the panel. And I'm going to zoom in future slides, but just to give you a sense there, you can see that these are all oriented on east-west axis, and these buildings are facing south. Next. Little close up, and we'll have another even closer version, but you see the shades over the windows, and we really, all the specifications that go into a building like this, and it could be a house, are really specific. It's specific angles for the shades. It's very specific window glass and other elements. So next slide. What I want you to focus on here inside this apartment is mostly that it's a normal functioning apartment, and it's not different because it's net zero. Yes, there's a mini split heat pump on the right, and you can see some ventilation in the ceiling for the energy recovery ventilation. There's some small windows on the north side. It's all LED bulbs, but in general, this doesn't have to be a sacrifice. It doesn't actually, in this instance, need to be more expensive. A big thing about these projects is their market rate. They're not costing any more than another multifamily project that's using conventional, that's not net zero. And in the time we have, I don't have to have time to explain exactly all the details of that. But if you go to the next slide, Adam, we'll see there's a couple more images. This one is really just, we started with, there are car charging, and the Net Zero Village was completed in 2016. In the last 4 years, where the industry has really gone, I'll jump to the conclusion here on one of our last slides, is from net zero, we're bridging into how does that affect all electric transportation, and how does that affect net zero carbon versus just net zero energy. Next slide. This is from the rear, from the face, looking at the north side of this building. Again, you can see the solar thermal panels on the roof, and those are producing all the hot water needs for the building. You see that there's not a lot of glass on the north side. It's minimized. Next slide. This slide, I just love this picture. So the glass the spec that I was talking about, it's designed to let the heat in. If we're going to use the sun as a furnace, we need that glass to let the heat in. But in the summer, we don't want a big air conditioning load. So if you look at if you can see the shading on the glass, it really shows you the attention to detail that goes into a project like this. Next. Okay, this is the all electric mechanical system. This is the outside units of the mini split that we showed on the inside. Each apartment has one, and no fossil fuels on site. And this is how we're heating and supplementing what we don't get through the windows. Next slide. We haven't talked about, there's a slide about air tightness, but once you have and you've captured this heat and you're using these really efficient equipment to use it, you don't want to just let it out. So you have to ventilate, and to ventilate, this is an HRV, we have ERVs, there's different ways to do it, but you need to provide fresh air to the home. And that's another key, it's all electric, and this is another key component of what we bring to a project. The PV systems are, each building is 12 units, and it has a 66 kW system. Next. Here's a close-up of what's on the roof, and this is, all the water that's going down, and we have a big storage tank and the level, and we could give a whole presentation on solar thermal and how that was integrated into the project, but it had a big effect. It really helped us reduce how much PV we needed, because we weren't trying to produce electricity to heat all of the water. Next slide. It's a foggy day here, so bear with the slide. But if you look up, you can see we use fog, theatrical fog, to test the envelope of the building. So during construction, before we have even insulated the building, we fill it up with theatrical fog, we pressurize it, and we look at where it's coming out to make sure there's continuity in the envelope and the airtightness. Again, if you don't want to try to produce energy on something that's leaky. So we need to make sure our number one goal is always to get the building airtight. Then we talk about insulating it. And then only then do we talk about producing things with solar panels or solar thermal on the roof. Next slide. Next. So I'll pause here again for just a minute. This is the Solera project. So this is the one that's under construction now. This is 248 units, and there'll be a couple other slides that you'll see. But basically, in this project, you can see the buildings are oriented east-west, but they're a lot deeper. We learned a lot of lessons from the first project, and so half the units on here are actually facing north, and half are facing south, which is a little counterintuitive. But we did an energy analysis, and we found ways to design this building to have 24 units instead of 12 units, and to face both directions and still meet our net zero goals. Next. Here's another slide. You can see the side of the building, different location for our mini split exterior. We kept them nice and cozy in those alcoves on the side. Next. This is a little bit later on, and this is the first 4 buildings of phase 1. You can see now the carports are there. You can see that the PV is beginning to be installed on the carports. Also on the roof, you can see the solar thermal system. And next slide. So that's a quick glimpse at net zero and what a building looks like, what a multifamily building looks like. There's lots of resources out there. LEED is one, LEED Zero in particular, for doing net zero. The biggest resource and part of this community is NYSERDA, and there's lots of resources out there for the NYSERDA that can help you understand what program is the right fit for your project. But New York State does an amazing job, and NYSERDA does an amazing job of making this accessible and making this type of project doable. There's no reason it can't be implemented. You just need the right team and the right resources, and I can't say enough great things about NYSERDA. Another organization is Living Future and the Living Future Challenge, which is another resource for if you're trying to do this type of project. They focus on other things besides energy, but that's good. And the last one I put up here is the Carbon Leadership Forum. And before we close out, I just want to talk to you about when we started this in 2016, or it was complete in 2016. It's been years before that in the making. Net zero was really the goal. What we're looking at today, and we're actually looking at implementing in phase 3 of the Solera project, is looking at what's net zero carbon versus net zero energy. So I just want to plant a seed there. You can look at the Carbon Leadership Forum, and it basically goes into not net zero as you produce how much energy on site, but what the Carbon Leadership Forum is working on is the embodied carbon. How much carbon went into the materials to produce the building on site that is net zero over the year. So lots of resources out there. The next couple slides will give you a couple more. You can go forward, Adam. The big message here before we close out with some good, see if there's any questions, is just I really want to emphasize that you can do this. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be an add-on. It just has to be integrated into the beginning. You need to design it. You need to think about it up front. You need to allocate resources. You got to get the right team. We can think about people, planet, and profit. All this can work together. And that's a big goal of the people involved with this project, is just to show that it can be done. And next slide. Well, before I open it up to questions here, I just want to say that you can reach me at jesse@blackmountainarchitecture.com. I'd be happy to answer questions. Let me know if things come up afterwards. And with that, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Jesse. And that's Jesse and Adam from Black Mountain Architecture. We do have a question. Can you talk a little bit more about the net zero carbon versus net zero energy?
Sure. So the carbon that goes into this building, there's things that, an example would be spray foam. So in our newer projects, we're starting to look at how much carbon goes in the atmosphere to produce a product. So if you're using spray foam, how much carbon goes in the factory to produce that puts carbon into the atmosphere before it even ends up on site. So that's one example. Another thing is like cellulose. There's products like cellulose insulation that are ground up newspaper, and that actually this gets into a lot of complication. It's not a simple thing, but if you can imagine, that's made of carbon and you're sequestering it into the wall and you're taking it out. So it's a balance of what goes into the atmosphere to produce a building is the simplest way to put it, versus how much energy do you use on site.
And could you talk just a little bit more about how to get existing buildings? So you talked a lot about these projects where you're thinking about these things prior to the build, but how about existing home stock and getting close to net zero as possible?
It's the same strategy. It's the same process. There are unique challenges to existing buildings. I think the biggest one is it's easiest to have a really big impact on an existing building and to get it to net zero when you're doing a pretty extensive remodel of it. When you really want to get full access from the inside or full access from the outside to really seal a building up, because they weren't built to be net zero back at, most existing buildings. So in order to do it well, you always want to focus on air tightness. So getting an energy audit, getting a blower door test, just sealing it up and getting it so air isn't moving through the building is the first thing. And again, the same principles apply. Get rid of the drafts, and once you have your container sealed, then think about insulating it. Once you've insulated your existing building, then and only then do you think about getting new windows, putting photovoltaic on the garage or the roof, or a solar thermal system. So you add those systems, but you really got to start with the fundamentals. And the same thing apply to an existing building as a new construction.
Right. So you're really looking at that energy efficiency piece, and then sort of like possibly renewable heating, and then adding on to, your building with possibly solar. So kind of a stepwise process. Yeah.
I mean, just energy efficiency first, right? No matter what, you don't like, to be net zero, you have to do a lot of you need your foundation underneath you from an energy perspective for it to make sense to do these other steps.
So I have strategies for no carbon fuel use on site, including for cooking.
So that's easy. You don't bring any carbon to the site. So that's the first step, which means all electric. So this has electric range. The induction is a great tool for homes. It's not, I have it in my home. It's not involved here. It's just electric. But if, another cutting edge thing is we're really lucky in New York State, especially northern New York, to have a relatively clean grid. But once you have it all electric, there's no propane on here. You just have electric heat. And to do that, you need really efficient electric heating systems, and you need to have your fundamentals, like I said, taken care of, so you can heat it with a very efficient electric system and not just an electric baseboard. But even we could still do a great job with electric baseboards in this building and still be net zero. It would require a little bit more PV. That's a little counterintuitive to people. But that part is becoming relatively easy to get the fossil fuels out. And now we're just looking at further things of cleaning up the grid itself.
And can you talk a little bit more about the cost savings over time and, comfort, added comfort?
Sure. Just that's what I was sort of getting at when I showed the pictures of those apartments. Like, they're just nice apartments. It's a nice house. It is comfortable. That's like something that just comes with this type of project is you don't have drafts. You have very clean, filtered, fresh air. The sun is coming in those windows in the winter when you want to be sitting in the sun and being warmed up. They're well lit. They're really comfortable projects. So that's just part of it.
And Katie, I don't know if you had any additional questions.
No more questions, but I did want to thank you for joining us today, Jesse. We really learned a lot. This really seems like this might be the building techniques of the future and the way the world is going.
We're really proud of the work. We really appreciate the invitation to be here. And as things come up, email me, and we'll do our best to answer anything that comes in.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and just as a reminder, so we've been talking about some of the energy efficiency pieces that you can do in your own home, and those start with a home energy audit, which is free for most New Yorkers. And you can also possibly qualify for some incentives through either the Empower program or the Assisted Home Performance program by NYSERDA. And we'll be talking in coming weeks about some of the incentives you can take advantage of for renewable heating in your home, whether that's through biomass or air source or ground source heat pumps. We did see those air source heat pumps in the presentation there with Jesse and Adam. And so this has been another edition of our Pathways to Energy Efficiency. Should you have any questions, please contact us, your CEAs. The contact information for us is on other presentations, but you can also look up smart energy choices for the North Country. And I think that's all we have for this edition. Thank you again to Jesse and Adam from Black Mountain Architecture.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.